Mate, that's the exact.
Now?
No, it's still in reverse level.
How's it looking?
Still in reverse. Yeah.
Yes, I run away.
Okay, alright, let me change it. Let me change it. It'll cost me a little bit
No
of
problem.
Steve,
I'll keep it.
Yes.
Kan hear. I can't hear anything.
So I will be going to the AGM soon, of Ithala. So I'll be sneaking out for the Ithala AGM, and then I'll come back at some point. Neville?
Ngube, who has tasked us to look at key programs or key work streams that will seek to assist companies during this period. COVID-19 has come and hit us really hard. And this morning session is really unpacking available COVID relief measures in order to sustain the KZN economy and KZN businesses. I will, as a start, just request our Honorable MEC to say a few words of welcome, and then we will then swiftly move into our panel. We are also expecting MEC Ravi Pillay to join the session. I'm going to request our Honorable MEC to welcome us.
Thank you very much, Neville, and I do wish to first and foremost welcome everybody, but also welcome our team of panelists that are joining us here this morning. and various members of, I know we've got members of parliament, members of the legislature, members of the executive, as well as other members that are joining us from various platforms on this very important discussions that we are going to be having here today. We are really grateful that a lot of people have joined us for the past 3 webinars that we have been having, really with an aim of broadening our discussion on those very important topics that we are having as the department, but also to try and find solutions to the very important challenges that are facing us at this particular time within our economy, but also in our province, where we are facing the pandemic. And I wish to point out that as the province, we want to turn the situation around that has been created by the COVID-19. But also we're looking at the situation as presenting some opportunities for us as a province. And we want to really unleash the new generation of entrepreneurs. We want to unleash the new generation of leadership in various sectors of our economy, because we do believe that there are a number of opportunities that are presented by the situation in terms of how do we localize our economy, but also looking at the issues that we are going to be discussing today. It's the issue of financing. The last thing we want to do is to throw monies at the challenges, but we would like to say, how do we stimulate the economy in a sustainable manner? How do we ensure that we invest our money wisely? And where we invest our monies, we invest our monies where the economy can grow. Which are the sectors in our economy that we believe have got the potential to really take us quicker to where we want to get to, particularly in terms of creating more jobs, creating more sustainable economy for our province. We have seen the emerging and the developing economies that all of us are going to be hit by this crisis. And most African countries, most developed countries, everybody's going to be hit by this crisis that we are facing. And we know as well that a number of countries that we are trading with, a number of them would not be able to invest as much as they would have invested with us. So we need to also then be looking inward as to what potential do we have amongst ourselves as a region, but also within ourselves in terms of the economy that we have. So those are the issues that we would like us to look at. The health sector indeed is one of the sectors that has got the potential for us to see how the innovation in that sector can help us to grow the economy, the sustainability of various sectors of our economy. I will repeat one of the comment I made yesterday, that one of the sectors that we do believe has got a potential to actually grow quicker and actually more with speed is the informal sector. How do we then ensure that that sector is supported to can stand up quicker, to can be able to roll much quicker? What do we do? Because we know the nature of that sector, but how do we then set it up in a manner that will be able to respond to the challenges that we are facing at the moment. And forward-looking, the sustainability of that sector as well, for me, is something that we'll have to look at moving forward. Of course, since the COVID-19 crisis that is with us, we know that most of our, FDIs are there, but there is a number of, requirements for many of our small and medium enterprises who might not be able to access a number of finances or a number of support or interventions that are available from government institutions. How do we then intervene as government with a number of our own financial institutions as government? How do we then ensure that where those small businesses, where those informal trade businesses are not able to access all these other interventions that are available from government, what kind of finance mechanism can we create as a province of KwaZulu-Natal that will be able then to respond to the informal sector or to any other sector for that matter, to support our businesses, big or small, because here we're not looking at only small businesses, we're looking at all businesses across all the sector. You will see that as we move with these webinars, we are going to be discussing various sectors of the economy. We're still going to be looking at the industry development, which will also be looking at even the construction industry. It's going to be looking at automotive industry. It's going to be looking at the manufacturing industries. It's going to be looking at really various sectors of the economy. We will, before we finish today the discussion, I'm sure we will give you the whole list of the sectors that we are going to be looking at, so that you are able to also see, even before we start with the webinars, we would like you to send us questions, to send us ideas, so that even our panel are able to respond even before we start some of these discussions. So we have, we would like to mainstream the sustainability in a holistic manner, as per the requirements of the various policies that we have as a government, but also we would like our policies to be responsive to the challenges that we are facing. We spoke yesterday about how we have as government, we have on the other side of the desk, you will have your entrepreneurs coming to our desk, coming to our offices with brilliant ideas, only to find that the people on the other side of the desk do not even have a clue of what is it that that entrepreneur is coming up with. And as a result, the entrepreneur will be told, no, this idea is not sustainable, or it's not viable, or it's not bankable. And the question is, who must then make that idea bankable if we cannot ourselves make these ideas bankable? Who must then be able to support the very same developmental ideas, which this government is supposed to be a developmental government, if the very same developmental government is not able to respond to its own people? So those are the ideas, those are the questions that we'd like to see this webinar answering today as we discuss. So we would like to see really this discussion provoking those thoughts. We would like to see this discussion facilitating solutions driven. I said to my colleagues, Gone are the days. We don't want business plans. We don't want a lot of, writing. We want solutions. We want to say, come next week. Where do we start? What do we do from next week to get this economy to start working? This is about this discussion. It's about making this economy to start working for our people. This discussion, it's about ensuring that a job that we don't
Are
lose
you
our
attending the
full
thing?
job
I am on
from
it.
this COVID-19 situation that we are facing. So in order then for us to implement these sustainable ideas, we would like to ensure that this discussion are not discussion for lamenting and not discussion for starting the complaints, but there are discussions for solutions for us to respond to the challenges that are facing us as KwaZulu-Natal, but there are also discussions for localization of our economies in KwaZulu-Natal, in our country, to ensure that we save every job that we have in our township, in our areas, and all the best for the discussion once more. And I would like to thank all of you in advance, and our secretariat also. I would like to thank all of you in advance for making sure that we have these discussions that are going to be happening. I know that today we have about 3 discussions for the whole day that are going to be taking place. And I hope that all of you are going to stay with us until very late in the day. Thank you very much, Neville, for the time.
Hi, Neville.
Is our facilitator still there?
Hi, Neville, please unmute.
Okay, Neville is still on mute. Yes, I see somebody is talking about tourism. Yes, we will be having a discussion on tourism as well. It is still going to be coming. Yes, Neville is back.
Thank you.
Over to you, Neville. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, MEC. I had a technology hiccup there. Thank you very much for those revolutionary words, MEC, and leading the way and assisting us in understanding our platform and what is required of us during these webinars. MEC has clearly articulated, and I will share that screen in terms of all the webinars that will be taking place in this week. It's a jam-packed week, but this is your chance to really participate and collect as much information as possible. Some of the chats, MEC, that are coming through, I've seen already are related to some of the small businesses that are requiring information, and they want to know how to participate and access funds. Without any further ado, and thank you very much, MEC, let me now take this opportunity to introduce the Honorable MEC for Finance for KwaZulu-Natal, MEC Ravi Pillay, who will also lead us in terms of our good welcome and setting the scene for our discussion this morning. MEC, welcome.
Thank you very much, Neville, and good morning to MEC Dube, if she's still there, and the panelists and all the participants. I think the first thing we've learned yesterday and again today is the massive audiences that we are generating. I'm told, Neville, that we already passed the 800 mark even on this webinar, and that already opens our mind to the new way of doing things in this COVID-19 period. But I just want to start by congratulating all those who have made this technologically appropriate engagement possible. Now, of course, at the risk of stating the obvious, we are in the middle of the COVID-19 crisis, a world challenge, and I think we were all quite pleased and proud that our response as South Africa, as led by our President and our Minister of Health, has generally been recognized as quite exemplary. I think we're also pleased to be able to report that the provincial response, as led by our Premier Sihle Zikalala and MEC for Health, Nomagugu Similane Zulu, has been equally impressive. Let's just remind ourselves that the latest figures tell us that South Africa, we have 4,793 infections. In KwaZulu-Natal, we have 902 and 30 deaths so far. Worldwide, 3 million infections, and the death toll has passed 209,000. So I think it's important to keep that perspective as to where we are as South Africa in this fight, and that potentially how serious it can become. Again, we are led by our National Command Council, and I think it's important to observe that the two principles underpinning the National Council, or three perhaps, the overwhelming reliance on science and data to inform its decisions, but also very importantly, the principle of unity amongst all the sectors of the South African population, and an approach of consultation before decisions are taken. And I'd like to think that this webinar, very exciting webinar program, is part of that consultation process. Of course, in KZN, we have the Provincial Command Council, which is chaired by the Premier, but also has importantly the chair of the South African Local Government Association, as well as the chair of the Provincial House of Traditional Leaders. And we've broken up our work into clusters, which are social, economic, what we call the GESID cluster, which is the what old legislature and governance, which is now governance, state capacity and institutional development. And then we have the JCPS, which is the security cluster, and then communications. But I want to say that in as much as we are talking finance, a key issue emerging is the capable state. Unlocking a capable state with capabilities, and that's important to draw that distinction. A capable state as where the people who are deployed to the state are working effectively and efficiently, and capabilities, which means largely, and at the risk of oversimplifying it, having systems and policies that work. So broadly, our approach is three-pronged in this response. Firstly, we have the health response, and as it said, is led by MEC Similane Zulu. And there's major components to that. We're currently at that very important stage of screening and testing, which then goes into contact tracing. It's a process that needs to be implemented with precision and dedication if it is to be successful. And those of you who follow what's happening in the rest of the world would know, for example, that in Germany, that particular approach has been implemented with pretty much success. So that's the first response, the health response. The second one is the response to the vulnerable. And we know it's very many sad stories about the levels of poverty and even hunger in our province at the moment. So the response to the vulnerable, whether it's via the UIF or the social relief of distress grants, there's a huge debate at the moment about the effectiveness of food parcels as an instrument, but we need to respond to our vulnerable people at this time. It's a key indicator of our effectiveness. And then the third leg is the economic response. And that economic response, as MEC Dube was relating to, has various components, which is the emergency response to be able to help businesses in crisis, to sustain existing businesses, to promote new businesses and new opportunities, to expand businesses, and not forgetting that we have a very important transformation objective in this entire exercise. It's very interesting that worldwide, the old debates about big government and small government are not really there anymore. In fact, there's almost unanimity that at this point in time, we need big government. We need a government that is able to be responsive and take charge and command. So let's just next look at the harsh economic realities, because we mustn't delude ourselves as to the nature of the crisis and the tough job we have. That's not to be despondent. I think we do have a plan, which we'll talk to just now, but that reality must underpin all our considerations. So you have a global contraction that's expected to be up to -3%. That's going to have an impact on us because to the extent that we rely on our exports. Another key indicator is that KZN employment could drop by as much as 14.6%. So these are the harsh conditions that we're going to have to work with. Now, as the MEC has indicated, KZN, under her leadership, has developed an approach to developing the recovery plan. And she mentioned the work streams, of which this is the second. I'll just go through it very quickly because I think it's important to understand the span of the sectors that we need to deal with. So yesterday was the 4IR ICT innovation. Today is finance. Then we have health innovation and manufacturing, because that's clearly a sector where we can stimulate local production, trade and investment, the informal sector, industrial development, a multidisciplinary committee approach to deal with red tape. Tourism has been mentioned, agriculture, very important in our province, infrastructure development, the creative economy, that's the arts in the main, and then clothing and textile, which we believe has some very specific resonance in our province. So these work streams are all meeting today, and will not today, and during this week, and will develop ideas, and we will catalog the outcome of the consultation into a first draft by the end of the week. Let's talk some hard numbers in terms of finance. As a province, we have an 138 billion rand budget, but 63% of that goes towards salaries, largely in the health and education sector, and we can understand why that is so. But that's not the only funding streams that come into the province. We have national departments who implement programs here. We have our state-owned entities like SANRAL, which or the Ports Authority as far as the Durban Harbour is concerned. We have the municipalities, which have a somewhat approximately 80 billion budget, of which Ethekwini is the biggest with some 50 billion rand. We got to take this full spectrum of financial flows and interrogate it and see what we need to do in responding to this crisis. Of course, from a macroeconomic financial point of view, the COVID-19 has intensified or even extended the kind of deficit that we've had and the issues around our debt, which can become a vicious cycle. But we've been quite prudent as a country, but everything is up for debate. Therefore, when we talk about going to the IMF or World Bank or BRICS, these debates must be dealt with soberly. And there's in the IMF, I can just report, for example, that if we do take money from them, and there's up to $4.5 billion that's available, which would be about, what, 80 billion rand, if my maths are correct, or 60 billion rand. That would be dedicated, that's available, but we may not apply for all of it, but that will have to be dedicated to a COVID response. In other words, you can't take that money and pay off debt, or you can't take that money to pay for some other purpose. But the interesting thing is that IMF loan potentially, if we were to take it, comes with a 1% interest rate attached to it. So we have to be practical as to how we make use of the opportunities that are there. Those of you who are observing the markets would know that in our general borrowing, especially after the downgrading, we're paying anything between 11 to 13% as the return on the bonds that we sell. So those sources of funding are going to be looked at. Of course, you've got the Solidarity Fund, which is small in number, collectively probably around 3 to 4 billion, but it's important in the message it sends about all sectors getting together to pool our resources. Now, if it's clear that we're going to have to face this squeeze, how are we going to deal with it? And the Minister of Finance has already announced that he would be looking at reprioritizing 130 billion rand from the internal budgets. And of that 130 billion rand, 100 billion will come out of national departments and 30 billion will come from provincial budgets. Our province being the size it is, we can expect that we would have to carry about 6 billion of that 30 billion in our cuts. Now, don't get too depressed. Yes, we'll deal with that. We'll have to reprioritize to fund that cut, but there will also be money coming back because this is a reprioritization exercise in the main towards 3 departments. The first one, of course, is health for obvious reasons. The second one is DSDs, Department of Social Development, and at a national level, there has to be reprioritization towards the South African National Defence Force because of the obvious costs of the mobilization of some 70,000 of the South African National Defence Force. Of course, we'll be looking at our conditional grants as well as potential cuts. I see I'm running out of time, so let me just summarize the balance of what I wanted to say, which was quite a bit, and maybe we can deal with that in the question session. So as we respond to this, we have to have serious plans, but at the same time have effective inclusivity. What MEC Dube and Ngube was talking about, the transformation objective, the informal sector, coupling it with the capable state with capabilities, as I have indicated. Now, the state has responded with this 500 billion package. Now, many of those who are participating today, would legitimately have an interest as to where this 500 billion is going to go to and what are the instruments which will be used. And I'm sure some of the panelists will talk about some specific things. But very briefly, we have 20 billion rand going to the health responses, which we spoke about. There's 20 billion rand going to local government, which we would hope to get a fair share of that. There's a 200 million on the tourism. There's 2 billion on the informal or small spaza shops category. There's 40 billion through the UIF system, and then 300 billion through the banks. This is not a grant. This 300 billion through the banks will be soft loan facilities. And I'm aware that not all the major banks, well, let's say very few of the major banks may be participating today, but we will be having a further session with them. In fact, they are having meetings with the Reserve Bank as we speak to determine the terms and conditions of that 300 billion loan, which will come through the banks to the private sector in the main. And once we know the precise terms and conditions of that, we will make it available. Now, the presentations you'll receive today are from important instruments: Ithala, KZN Growth Fund, NEF, IDC, Sefa. And as I said, the banks are not speaking here today, but we hope that in a follow-up session, we will bring them into this discussion as a very, very important player. Very quickly, I think we cannot deal with finance without dealing with the question of procurement. And whether it's perception or fact, it's clear there's something wrong with the way our procurement is dealt with, whether in terms of due process, whether in terms of value for money. So that's something that, yes, very much part of the capable state, but we have to confront that so that all players are aware of the rules that must apply to everybody. It'd be interesting to get the feedback to hear, what is the perception of the way the procurement system is undertaken in our province and what we can do to guard against any abuse. There's a whole range of work that needs to be done with municipalities, but the time doesn't allow me to go through that. Let me just conclude by saying that in embarking upon this exercise, we really want to follow the national message and embrace everyone: big business, small business, unemployed. Have a bias to the poor. It's not a time for party politics. It's all of us have to jointly put our shoulders to the wheel in this effort. It's an effort that's going to require some sacrifice, but I strongly believe that if there's a clear plan and everybody is buying into this plan and in knowing deep down that this is in the best interest of our people, then everyone will be prepared to make a sacrifice to make it happen, but knowing that we're going to emerge on the other end of this crisis with the possibilities of really exponential growth. Neville, thank you. I've gone beyond my time. I don't want to abuse your chairpersonship's generous nature. Let me pause there, and perhaps we can take some questions later. Thank you.
Thank you, MEC. MEC, I think you've really provided a good way forward in terms of what is to be expected of our sessions today. And I think it just enhances also the remarks also given by our MEC Nomsa Dube, in terms of the key purpose of actually addressing key challenges that some of the companies are actually experiencing. MEC, thank you for highlighting also some of the processes that we should expect in terms of lending at a government perspective, and also indicating some of the sectors that should be indicated as should be focused on. As MEC has indicated, today's session will be focusing on our government instruments. So we have a panel from Ithala Development Bank, KwaZulu-Natal Growth Fund, Industrial Development Corporation, National Empowerment Fund, as well as and Sefa. So these are colleagues who will be presenting some of the key instruments that will be funded from that are there from their respective agencies. And then, as MEC Ravi Pillay has indicated, next week we will also then be having one with the private sector. That is where also, as Provincial Treasury, will be having our HOD who will be participating as part of that process as well. Just to interact with the private, with the other banks to see what instruments they have and how they assist business. They are seeking to assist businesses. Hopefully, after the meeting with the Reserve Bank, as MEC Ravi Pillay has indicated, we'll have a better insight as to exactly how they're going to be coming on board. Without any further ado, let me introduce Ms. Pearl Bengu, who's the CEO of Ithala Development Corporation, who is our first presenter who will be taking us through the presentation. Steve, I don't know, are we ready to start the presentation? Mrs. Pearl, I'll hand over to you.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Chairperson, and good morning to all the other panelists and the people that are here with us. And I'd like to also greet all the people that are out there, the businesses that have joined us this morning. I'd like Steve to please put up the presentation for me. But before I start with the presentation, I'd like to maybe briefly tell people about Ithala, just one sentence about it. We are an SOE, which is a government entity under Edtea, and we do have SMMEs. We do give funding to SMMEs, and we have a large portion of our balance sheet, which is formed by properties that we do have all over KZN. As an agency that was formed then, Ithala is under Schedule 3D, which means that as Ithala, we must make our own money to fund our own budget, whether it's the budget for operations and the budget for CAPEX, which is, in short, I just want to say as well, we're finding ourselves in the same dilemma as the small businesses are finding themselves in, because we need to be able to fund our mandate with whatever we get on a monthly basis from our business finance clients, as well as our properties that are all over KZN. To start with the presentation, the content, it's a very short presentation that I'd like to make. Just to give a background, the next slide, please. We have a mandate for properties, where we have a mandate again for business finance. And then I'll touch the last part on the national relief that we're also looking at as IDFC. And then on the next slide, we just want to give the mandate that we need to stimulate economic activities in disadvantaged areas, job creation and investment opportunities that we need to give to our clients. And we also need to optimize property portfolio, supporting industrial and priority sectors, which is like manufacturing, and again, to increase contribution to SMMEs. And SMMEs, in our language, they involve cooperatives, they involve everyone that's under socio-economic transformation and job creation. So we are mostly guided by the economy, which is sometimes not a very formal economy. And we do give money should I say, loans to people, even if they're street vendors. We do give loans. We go to that extent as IDFC. So you would understand how much we are hit as well. So on the next slide, we're trying to show the properties business, which is hard hit at the moment. We know that properties, if you look at the shopping centers, you find only 1 or 2 shops that are opened. It will be your food outlets as well as the chemists. We're having the same problem. If you look at our properties, we have large industrial areas which are also hit because a lot of people are not working, and retail, which is part that is really keeping us alive, all the retail shops. And I have had an opportunity to visit around KZN, right deep until Josini and Makatini to have a look at what is happening there. I found that only food outlets were opened and all the other outlets were not operational. And we do understand the problem that we are faced with, as well as our clients that are faced with. And then again, if we go to the next slide, we said as Ithala, because of the type of business that we're doing, next slide, please, Steve, because of our business, our relief measures, we will look at the relief measures as well as Ithala. We said we know when we did our calculations and requesting help on our own side from Edtea, as well as from our MEC for finance, we have taken into account 3 months that we expected that we won't be getting any revenue from our clients. But we said with our clients, we will be able to defer rentals with no penalty charges for up to 6 months, because we are aware that the recovery period is going to be long. We really understand. We're saying 6 months for now. We're aware that the COVID-19 impact might be well over 6 months. We really are aware of that. And then we will be discounting some rentals, especially in our areas, our industrial areas, because they always get discounts. We're working for another package where we can discount their rentals as well, because if they don't manufacture, they're not selling anything. But we are working with other people that really want to go into manufacturing because of the opportunity that has been given by this pandemic. And we are encouraging our businesses, our small businesses, to diversify and to get in what is happening now. And we are open for business for that. And then, with the criteria, we will know. I will just say, for the past few years, our businesses, our small businesses have been hit by the drought. We are aware of that. But for you to qualify here, we need that you would have had a signed lease agreement with us. If you have you are a tenant in our properties and have a good payment history, have a recovery plan to recover your losses. Even if you're giving us a plan, I know MEC is not a big plan. I really agree with MEC, but if you have an idea on how you're going maybe to try and diversify your business, I aim for that, because you can not be running the same business even if the times are changing. You have to change with the times. And then the proof of application for relief. On the relief side, we're saying all our clients, we are open to help them to get into this relief. We will have some time again just to explain to them. I am in contact with small businesses, deputy minister all the time, and we have written to them and we have given them our database of our clients. But then we said, as they come to us, we'll be able then to help them. And then the financial impact must be caused by the lockdown. That must be very clear, that you are unable to pay us because of the situation. And then undertaking that there will be no retrenchment of employees for up to 9 months. If you know our mandate as IDFC, we have to make sure that people are always employed. And whatever we help, whenever we help all our SMMEs, we want to make sure that no one will be retrenched during this period, so that we also want to balance that part of us being a social or economic focused IDFC, IDC. Okay, and then on business finance, we do have people under agriculture. We on the next slide, please, Steve. And then we have commercial property finance. We have procurement finance. We have structured finance. We have asset finance, microfinance, and franchise finance. And most of those people are really in distress at the moment. I must just mention that on the procurement finance, we have found that at least with all the people that are busy with the feeding scheme, I think they'll be happy to hear that we have received more money. We received last month, unlike everybody else who stopped paying everything. I'd like to say thank you to MEC Mshengo, and we have received some money this month as well, and we will be paying all our clients that are doing feeding scheme and that are under IDFC, because their money has come to our books again this month, which means for them, business is still carrying on. And on the business finance, we're saying case by case, no blanket approach. Unfortunately, we cannot do a blanket approach for our businesses. We are looking at them. We have a lot of applications already that we're looking at, and we saying 3 months, and then the interest accumulated on loan we won't be saying pay interest. You just won't pay your whole debt, and then we're giving 3 months on that one. We're saying 3 months for now. It might change if this takes longer, then we'll be able to change. And then you also must have a good payment record and have recovery plan, and then financial impact must be caused by lockdown as well. And yeah, and we are saying on national relief, as I have touched on it, that has been announced by the president. We have read letters that are written, but we do want our clients not to stand back, because if you look at our clients, whenever they have problems, they don't come to us. We would like everyone, even those that have had some problems before or the COVID-19 pandemic, they must come to us. We want to sit with them. We want to help them. We want to help them with all the applications from our side, what they can get from our side as IDFC, and then help them with all what is happening out there, because they definitely need our help. We are aware that most of them, we have written to them letters, posted letters, emailed letters to them, because we are aware that some of them, they're not ready. They are in deep rural areas where they are not able to join us like as we speak now, but we are there for them. We want to move with them. We want to make sure that we work this difficult part together with them. Thank you very much, Neville. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul, for that presentation. Without any further ado, we're going to move to our next speaker, the CEO of KwaZulu-Natal Growth Fund, Mr. Aubrey Shabani, who will then take us through his presentation. Welcome, Mr. Shabani.
Thank you, Neville. Good morning. Again, thanks to fellow panelists as well as all attendees. While Steve is uploading the presentation, it's a presentation about 4 slides, and it will mainly just in one slide look at what KZN Growth Fund does for the businesses in KwaZulu-Natal, and then as well as look at what the relief measures that we have come up with as KZN Growth Fund. You can move to the next slide, Steve. In terms of the, for those who may not be aware, we are an entity under Edtea, which is a department that is led by the Honorable MEC Nomusa Dube-Ncube. Our main reason for existence, which we call mandate, is creation of decent jobs and transformation of the economy. So for all projects of finance, there has to be a minimum of 51% Black ownership. before we can even look at the application. We further define so that there is the distribution is fair in terms of the demographics of the province. And our task is also to finance private sector-led projects. So every project that we finance the majority has to be the private sector, not government-owned projects. And the projects have viable. This is important because KZN Growth Fund does not get funding for its operational expenses. We pay rent and salaries from the funds that we generate on our own. So therefore, the projects that we fund, they have highly viable. So we don't provide grant funding. And also we look at the impact. You can move to the next slide, Steve. COVID-19, I just took a sample of our clients and looked at the ones that have been severely affected by the COVID-19. Like there are like 4 main sectors that are affected heavily. Under healthcare, we have invested in private hospitals, ranging from Waduguza Private Hospital to Hillcrest Hospital. And these have been affected badly. And someone may say, during COVID-19, you will expect healthcare hospitals to be actually making money. But for now, the opposite is true because hospitals, the private hospitals can't take normal patients during this time as the capacity has to be always available for the time when there is a peak in terms of COVID-19 clients. Therefore, most of our hospitals have occupation of around 30%, and that's revenue lost, and therefore they are struggling. Under transport and logistics, we have got cold storages, and there, as you might be aware, that if you have a cold storage here in Durban, relying on importing and export, and therefore your cold storage runs empty. And then we have companies also into manufacturing, either steel fabrication or auto manufacturing. These ones are affected, and they may be affected even post the COVID-19, as well as businesses. If we move to the next slide, before talking about the measures, I should commend some companies in our portfolio companies have seen what is happening and they were able to adjust on time such that they seize the opportunity brought by the COVID-19. I just taken 2 examples here. We have a company called Afrozonke Chemicals that they produce industrial chemical solutions, but when COVID-19 came in, they quickly switched to production of sanitizers, which is a business which is a product that is required during this COVID-19 time. So this is agility. It's when black business people realize an opportunity, and because they already have chemical engineering expertise, it was easy for them to switch to producing sanitizers. And with a company called BFG that produces clothing stands for your big retailers like your Mr. Price and so on. So realizing that clothing retailers are closed, no one is buying stands for which is their key product that they produce. They have switched on to production of these glass shields that you see at the tills, protecting the till operators. So we commend people like this, and we encourage our clients to say, use the opportunity and try to be agile in dealing with challenges that are like this. If you go to the next slide, then we talk now the purpose of this meeting, which are the relief measures that we are putting in place. I've divided them into 2. There are relief measures that are for portfolio companies. By portfolio companies, I'm referring to the companies that are funded by KZN Growth Fund. And then I will also look at new applications. So in an effort to fight the impact of the COVID-19, our shareholder, which is Edtea, has assisted KZN Growth Fund with an injection of about 25 million rand relief. And this will enable us to give 3 months worth of capital repayment relief to our clients, so they will not be servicing capital in terms of the loans they have to repay. as well as a 6 months interest-free repayment relief. And it's important to note that unlike some of commercial banks where this means you delaying the payment, you would have to pay this amount at a later stage. Because of the assistance from MEC, we are able to say these amounts are not deferred, but we're giving a real relief so that the companies can concentrate on saving jobs and also changing their business operations. We have also provided an assistance to the value of 7 million in terms of rental assistance. We have a company, especially there was one company that has been struggling with payment of rent, and we have put aside 7 million for that. And you know, when you are in this space of providing finance, you get people at times who don't pay your loans either because they are struggling or the market has turned against them. Normally, as a funder, you start litigating against those. You start a litigation process. During this time, we've decided to put on hold litigations against the non-performing loans, so that because these are unusual times, it's not business as usual. And we also provide non-financial assistance to our clients, where we are looking at assisting them with market penetration, giving them ideas. There is this product that is required at this time. Why don't you switch? You already have capacity, you already have the infrastructure. It's easy for you to start producing a particular product. So that's the kind of relief we are assisting our clients. And for now, what we have assisted is in excess of 30 million rand, just to make sure that these companies are still operational beyond the COVID-19. But we'll continue assessing the situation. If you go to the next slide. In the next slide, we're then looking at those who may want to approach KZN Growth Fund for new applications. The board of KZN Growth Fund is currently looking at our investment policy and see if there are prescripts that could be relaxed during this time, because it's not business as usual. And in the process of relaxing some investment policy prescripts, we shall be looking at prioritizing funding companies that are producing essential goods that are needed during this time. It could be masks, it could be sanitizers, like I said, it could be hospital beds, it could be gloves and so on. So those companies that are able to say this is an essential good that is required urgently, we're looking at prioritizing those. And then we'll also be providing discounted interest rate. We will not be charging our normal interest rate, but it will be discounted. In the near future, we shall be giving more details around the kind of interest rates that we'll be charging. The board has also taken a decision that we need to fast track the approval turnaround times during this time. It can't be business as usual where we spend months trying to assess, conduct due diligence and so on. So in times like this, there is an element of risk taking that KZN Growth Fund will be looking at, such that we are able to turn around applications in order to assist especially our Black businesses. And we will also be looking at prioritizing the funding of companies that are looking at localization. The MEC, Edtea MEC pointed out in her introduction that it will be a different normal after COVID-19, where what has happened has shown us that the dependency on importing is not sustainable. Something like this happens and the international markets are closed. We find ourselves as unable to produce, say, the raw materials are coming from outside the country. So companies that are coming to us and saying, currently we are importing X amount and will assist and prioritize that. And then there is talks of establishing a COVID-19 fund for the province. As KZN Growth Fund, it's one project that we are willing to join and contribute to it, such that we have got a dedicated fund that could assist the province, in addition to the national funds that are there. If it does take off, we will participate in it. And for the new applications, we're looking at providing up to 24 months of grace period in terms of repayment, which would allow for companies to concentrate on the initial production, on the commissioning, and then until they are income positive to be able to service our loans. So we'll give them a grace period of up to 24 months. And then in terms of KZN Growth Fund, together with Ithala, one would say what is before. In terms of business finance, Ithala will concentrate on micro and small SMEs up to 25 million rand. Ordinarily, KZN Growth Fund starts financing from 25 million rand and above. But during this time, the board is even looking at if somebody comes with a project that is 20 million rand instead of 25 million rand, we will not be saying go away because you are below the threshold. We look at those projects. If there's a merit into that project and the project is viable, we will look at financing that project. So those are the relief measures, and there could be more that are coming up in the next few days. We will then try to announce as they are available. The board is sitting regularly during this time to assess the situation, assess our current book, as well as assess the trends that are taking place in the province as well as in the country. Lastly, the last slide, that's the end of the presentation. If anyone has a project that they want to consider or apply funding for, you can send an email to KZN Growth Fund. The email address is info@kzngf.co.za, or you can visit our website for details. Thank you, Neb.
Thank you very much for that presentation, and I am hoping that audience has clearly seen how you've been able to break down the finance and relief measures that are offered by KZN Growth Fund, which will make it easier for them to know which one they're going to be applying for. Thank you very much, Aubrey, for that presentation. I will now move over to our next presenter, Pat Moodley from Industrial Development Corporation, who will take us through also a presentation and also outlining some of the support measures and relief measures that have been announced, particularly by our state president in the last couple of weeks, regarding how those are going to be channeled through the IDC. I'm sure, Pat, you are going to be inundated with questions as well after your presentation, so welcome, Pat.
Good morning, Neville. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for giving the IDC the opportunity for this morning. If I can please have my presentation on the screen, please. Okay, next slide. Okay, the IDC COVID-19 fund was established to provide funding to companies for the acquisition and or the manufacturing of the essential supplies on the urgent basis to combat the COVID-19 pandemic that is facing South Africa. So essentially, we put a funding mechanism in place to assist companies that are either producing or supplying these essential products to combat the COVID-19 product. Essential supplies include products on a comprehensive published by the Treasury Department, which may be updated, from time to time. So we're following the guideline that is given by Treasury in terms of what is essential products. Next slide, please. Okay, what is the qualifying criteria? I think the slide is quite busy, but in essence, we need either you have a contract or a tender or an order from a government department or a hospital to supply these critical safety goods, then we can consider your application. The focus will be on South Africa. We will require that you have a good credit standing. The companies should be accredited suppliers and meet all the compliant requirement in terms of safety and the the compliance issue on it. Another important thing, in the absence of a contract or order, corporate guarantee from a company with an investment grade that may be considered, where there is clearly, there's a shortage of supply exists, then a letter of intent may be a motivational motivational instrument that we can consider when we're looking at funding. Next slide, please. Okay, in terms of the IDC COVID-19 funding, as I said, the important aspect is you have to have an order to submit or qualify for consideration for the COVID-19 funding. There's different mechanism how we can look at this. We can look at a revolving credit facility. Normally, because this is a short-term funding, the funding is normally for a period up to 3 to 12 months. We can look at a guarantee to banks for banking facilities, import or ordering requirements. Tends to be limited for, as I said, 3 to 12 months. We're looking at a 3 to 12 month period. Again, the COVID-19 funding for essential supplies, the interest rate would be it's risk-based, and currently it's around prime plus 1%. If we issue in a guarantee, it's 2% per annum. Next slide, please. These are the current COVID-19 essential supply areas of focus. As I'm not going to go through, you can read through them. These are the essential supplies product that we're looking at currently. But as I said, it's not exhausted. You can always come, even if it's not on the list, you can always chat to us, and then we can see how we can assist in processing your application. Next slide, please. As I said, in terms of information, we normally need, because of the quick turnaround time that we need to give these applications, the focus will be on, most importantly, is the order or the letter of intent, a letter from your bank stating or any financer that you're in good standing, your bank statement for the last 12 months, normal FICA requirement, tax clearance certificates, CVs of management, and importantly, your financial forecast, your budget, including the contract that you have on hand to supply the current orders that you need to execute. Next slide, please. Again, the description of the project, copies of contracts or purchase order from government, quotation to supply applications of funds, security available, personal balance sheets. All this information is available on our IDC website, www.idc.co.za. So if you go onto our website, we've got a special page for COVID-19 funding, and all this information is available on our website. Next slide, please. Okay, this is the interesting, the MSEP, this is money that we got from the Department of Trade and Industry, and it's similar to the same qualifying criteria, the only different, next slide, please. Because of the low interest rate, this funding is limited to 30 million rand per applicant. And as you can see on the price is fixed at 2.5% per annum. Now, this funding was given to us from the Department of Trade and Industry, DTI, to the IDC to assist companies for working capital to supply again the essential services. So if, say, for example, you're applying for 50 million, you may get 30 million at 2.5%, and then the other 20 million at normal interest rate. So what we'll give you a blended rate of interest. Okay, next slide, please. Again, the MSEP fund is focused on the essential services, like the normal IDC COVID-19 funding. Next slide, please. Yeah, in essence, the COVID-19 funding is available for essential services that you have an order for, and that we can assist you in providing working capital to execute that order. To apply for the funding, you can send us an email to covid@idc.co.za, and my email address is patm, P-A-T-M, @idc.co.za. In conclusion, I think also over and above the COVID-19 funding, the IDC got what we call a distress funding. That is to help existing companies of IDC and new companies that are experiencing cash flow problems due to the COVID-19 issues. And the important thing here is, as at the end of Feb 2020, your company needed to be in a financially secured position. And the COVID-19 must have had an impact on you. So if that's the case, again, you can come to us, to the IDC, to assist you in terms of a distress funding. Importantly, you need to have a turnaround plan of how you're going to regenerate cash flows to repay your loan. Again, the distress funding will look at a longer period, up to about 48 months. And as I said, the important aspect, you have to have a turnaround plan in place, a sustainable turnaround plan in place, and then you can look, you can communicate with the IDC, you can contact me, and we can look at how we can assist you from a distress point of view. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Pat, for that presentation regarding the IDC. We're looking forward to the questions. I see they're coming in fast and furious. While you're busy presenting, we'll go through the question and answer session afterwards. We're going to move swiftly to Pagamile Madonsela for the National Empowerment Fund, who will then take us through some of the instruments from the NEF. Pagamile, welcome. Pagamile, are you with us? I'll just request you unmute yourself. Right, welcome.
Pagamile. Thank you. I hope Steve has got my presentation. And can I ask him to load it at the moment? No, wrong presentation. Steve? Steve?
Your presentation is on, Mr. Madonsela.
If you can
Stephen,
share your
could you
presentation.
kindly load my presentation?
If you can share your presentation on your one, I actually don't have your presentation sent to me.
Hi, Neville, can you start with Sefa, Mr. Tula Mkwanazi, whilst we are loading the presentation for Mr. Madonsela?
Thank you. Tula, are you ready to come in?
Hi, Neville.
Yes. Welcome, Tula. If you could start with your presentation, please.
Hello.
Steve, the presentation
All right.
is set up. Thank you.
Oh,
I'll just request all the other members, if you could please mute your mics so that we can then give Tula a hearing. Thank you.
Good morning, colleagues, and also thank you for the opportunity to allow Sefa to present what we are offering as a DFI at this point in time, as what the SMEs actually do need most. And basically, just a short background: we are Sefa. We're a baby of, or rather, an agency of small business development. So that's how we come about. So really, I'll just touch on only what we are funding, or what funding opportunities are there at Sefa for this particular for the COVID-19 facilities. We are currently looking after two funds, which is the SMME debt relief, as well as the restructuring that is only for Sefa's existing clients. That's the relief one, the restructuring one. For the debt relief, we are looking at all SMEs, whether clients of Sefa or not clients of Sefa. I'll take you through that. Next slide, Steve. Next slide. Okay. Basically, the rationale behind this fund here, it was really to assist those small businesses that have been severely affected by the COVID-19 through assistance with the working capital. And working capital mainly to assist to sustain the existing jobs that are of the people that are currently being employed by the SMEs. So the main focus is just around working capital. So working capital in the form of very, very soft loan. It's not a grant, it's a soft loan. It comes through at prime minus 5%. The maximum you can apply for is 500,000. It's up to 500,000. We do give a 6-month moratorium, and really should the funds not be used for what they were intended for, there would be some penalties that we will impose, because there will be a post-investment follow-up where we will then do the inspection that the funds were used for the purpose that it was intended for. The main qualifying criteria is just for the company to show that it has been negatively affected by the COVID-19, and then it's 100% owned by South African citizens, and then employs 70% of South Africans. We do require compliance, main compliance with SARS, so your tax clearance must be in order. But for a UIF, we do allow that if we're not already registered on UIF, we do allow that you perhaps agree on an undertaking to do that process post-investment. So you can register for UIF after we have assisted with the funding. You can proceed. Next screen, Steve. Okay, the application process, our application requirements. The main thing is around you must just show that the company has been affected by the COVID-19, which is generally not a difficult thing to provide, because you can most entities we know, and also industries, that information is usually public knowledge in terms of how they've been impacted and so forth. There is an online application platform where first of all the companies would register to the SMMESA database. So once you've registered there, you do get a unique number. After that, you then complete an online application form, or you can download the application form and then submit it through to the email address. I'll share that later on. Typically, your SARS and CIPC documents, the FICA ID copies, they don't necessarily have to be certified because we do understand the limitations that are that all the businesses are currently experiencing. We do require your 3 months bank statements, sometimes your management accounts if you do have the cash flows, other funders if there are any other funders. But the main thing is then also for the entrepreneur to show the funding that they require, and then also to provide information regard to that. For instance, if you are looking for assistance around salaries or rent and what have you, a lease agreement is sufficient to provide evidence that you do need you are paying rental. And then also your salary schedule will also show us that you will show us the number of employees and so forth. So whatever you use to show that you are actually incurring this, you do have that obligation. It's important for you to substantiate that you do have the obligation for us to assist with the funding. So we can move, Steve. You can move to the next slide. Okay, I've mentioned the application process. Just one back. I've mentioned that, just one back, Steve. Okay, I've mentioned that smmesa.gov.za. That's where you first have to register, and then you get the online application form, which you then submit to that email address, which is a smmerelief@sefa.org.za. And just move to the next slide. I've mentioned the application process. I've mentioned that it's not a grant. It is a loan. It is a soft loan. We're targeting all SMEs within the country. The interest rate is at prime -5. The term can be up to 5 years, and then the process usually it depends on the supply of information mainly, but we do try to turn around the applications with speed, and generally between 7 to 10 working days we do 10 applications around. At times even quicker if the information is all readily available, and then we will then inform the applicant once the application has been completed and successful. And nothing further. Thank you so much, colleagues. Thank you so much. That's it. Thank you, Steve. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tula, for the presentation. We will now swiftly go to National Empowerment Fund presentation. I do apologize that it's information overload, but it's necessary information overload. After this presentation, we'll go straight into the Q&A session. Pagamila, are you ready? Pagamila, I need you to unmute yourself, please.
Can you hear me, Neville?
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Yes, I'm presenting what we as the National Empowerment Fund are bringing forth in terms of being able to intervene in terms of this COVID-19 epidemic that is hitting our country. Steve, could you go through to the next slide? Firstly, perhaps it's important just to give you a history of the organization so that it gives you a background of how our intervention is. We are a government agency under the Department of Industry and Competition, exclusively mandated to drive BBBE. We are located all over the country in different regions. In KZN, our offices are based in the Kingsmead Office Park, and we are one of the largest SMME funders in South Africa. Next slide. Our mandate, therefore, is to facilitate Black economic participation through the provision of financial and non-financial support, as well as encourage Black people in terms of culture of savings and investment. I think this is important to give as a background so that you can understand the thrust of our intervention in terms of why we have then chosen to go the routes that we have. Please go to the next slide. So, and the next slide. So we have what COVID-19 Black Business Funding Solution. And what we're trying to be able to get involved in terms of intervening is to be able to look at medical supplies and personal protective equipment that we have seen in the country is depleting at a great deal, and there's a need for us to be able to intervene to ensure that Black businesses in particular participate in this industry, because what we have right now is all the countries are competing. There are over 180 countries that are hit by the pandemic, and with that we need to be able to ensure that as a government agency we intervene to support local manufacturing of to secure these stocks. Please move on to the next slide. So in partnership with the Department of Trade and Industry and Competition, NEF is calling upon Black-owned and controlled businesses. I did state at the beginning that we are mandated to exclusively grow triple BE in South Africa, and therefore we are looking strictly at Black-owned and controlled businesses who want to be able to get involved in the manufacture and supply of various medical supplies and personal protective equipment. We have certain identified priority products that I'll give a list to that we are looking for Black businesses to manufacture and supply into the industry, and we are giving a concessionary loan funding through a blended facility. We are trying to ensure that as we respond to this pandemic, we are also driving sustainable economic transformation within the industry on medical supplies and protective equipment. Please move to the next slide. So the salient features of the fund that we're providing is the fact that we have 200 million rands that we are trying to be able to get into Black businesses in order to be able to respond to the COVID-19. Funding starts from 500,000 and is limited to a maximum of 10 million per applicant. And we're giving that towards working capital, machinery, and equipment. We are giving up to 12 months payment moratorium on the first year of the loan, and all that is at 0% fixed interest rate. So in other words, you are getting a moratorium to say for the first year, you will not need to pay capital or interest during that period. After the 12 months, your loan will be payable, or a soft loan will be payable at 2.5% interest rate, which is fixed. So for the remaining 4 years, because our loan is for a maximum of 6 months, you will be paying the loan back, the capital and the interest at 2.5%. We need the fact that when you apply and you get approval, you would need to draw this money out in the first month. The reason we put this out is because of the fact that we want the response to be quick. We want people to actually make use of this funding and not just get an approval and sit with the money and then we have put it aside and it is not being utilized. We want this money to go into the economy as soon as possible. Next slide, please. So what is the funding criteria for this? I've spoken to the issue that we're looking for Black-owned and businesses. So we're looking for over 50% Black shareholding and management control. I need to stress this, 50% Black shareholding and management control. We do not just want 50% shareholding, we want you to be involved in the day-to-day running of the operation, because we are driving Black businesses and want to create those Black businesses or be able to expand the ones that are there to ensure that they respond to this. Black business obviously is in accordance to the Broad-Based Black Economic Empowerment Act. In line with our mandate, we are also trying to ensure that the many women businesses get involved, and we are looking for meaningful Black women ownership and management control in terms of the businesses. As I've said, we are funding from a minimum of 500,000 to 10 million for working capital, machinery, and equipment. Funding must result in either the maintenance of current jobs that are there or the increasing of direct jobs in terms of the businesses that were funded. We do look for commercial viable projects. It is important to be able to ensure that there is viability in terms of the projects, because we're looking to ensure that even after COVID-19, these Black businesses continue to be able to run and to be able to ensure that they contribute to society. Please move on to the next slide. The funding criteria continues in terms of us looking for legal entities as registered under the Companies Act or the Closed Corporation Act. You must be a taxpayer in good standing and produce a valid tax clearance certificate. You must be a current and registered supplier with a retailer or institution, or be in good standing and have a purchase order, contract, and letter of intent. The reason we've done this is because there are some people who are supplying to retailers or are on databases on government institutions, and they may not necessarily produce an order. We would want to be able to see proof of that, being on that database. But if that is not there, you can produce an order, a contract, or a letter of intent. We require to be able to provide you with working capital, as I said, or to purchase machinery and equipment. And the fund will not service any pre-existing. We're not doing debt consolidation. We will not settle any monies that you previously owe. We want it to go towards production of these products that we require. Please move on to the next slide. So what are the key documents? We have tried to simplify what we require. Obviously, we'd need your application form. We'd need your company registration, your tax clearance and your FICA documents, your declaration of your BE status and the size of the business, a summary of production if you're already involved in the business in the last 3 months to see what have you been producing, the quantities and the sales thereof. A copy of historical financial statements if you have been in business up to 3 years, your latest management account, and obviously your financial projections. We require that signed copy of a contract, a purchase order or a letter of intent, or a letter of confirmation that you are listed in the database of that institution or that organization you want to supply. We need industry body accreditation. This is particularly important when we're dealing with sanitizers as well as the masks, where we want to make sure that what you are producing meets the criteria or the approval of the industry. We do not want people to produce sanitizers that end up harming our people, or masks that do not do what they are required to be able to do. And there may be additional information that we'll require as we go along. Please move on to the next session. So what are the products that we're trying to support? The ones that are listed on the slide, you will see medical gloves, approved cloth and propylene face masks, sanitizers and soaps, disinfectants and alcohol-based wipes, test kits, coronavirus test kits, medical protective clothing, hospital linen and clothing, detergents and cleaning products, disposable aprons and cups, dispensers of water, sanitizers or soap, mattresses and sponges, steel hospital beds, protective respirators, and toilet paper. These are the ones identified by our parent ministry, the DTIC, to say these are the ones that are most needed in the economy, and therefore those are the ones that we're driving. We may look at others outside of this depending on the motivation, but these are our primary focus. Move on, Steve. So I just thought it's important just to give a couple of examples so that it makes it a bit clear on what we're talking about. This is one of the examples of what we're funded. I know there's a lot of questions that come around the issue of distribution. Do we fund people who are distributing products? This is a company that is a Black African-owned youth business that is involved in this, and they're 50% Black female and 50% Black males. They obtained this as an order to supply 100,000 3-ply masks, and it came with an irrevocable letter of guarantee for 1.04 million. We have also found that they will be able to not just supply these orders, but they will continue to get other orders as they go along, because we want to get sustainable businesses and not just, you know, those people who are coming in to be able to make a quick buck, but we're looking to create sustainable businesses in what we're looking for. And obviously there was job creation and maintenance. Move on to the next one, Steve. We also have funded a business that is involved in hand sanitizers called Green Logic. It's a 100% Black-owned business. It had an order as well for 5 million from Pick and Pay, and to supply sanitizers. And these are not your normal industrial sanitizers. These are the ones that are perfumed and the like. And we have been able to fund them at 6.1 million rands, and they have been able to maintain 27 jobs. Move on to the next one. Zonka Chemicals, that was mentioned by the CEO of KZN Growth Fund, has diversified and looked at doing sanitizers. They used to be chemicals, just doing chemicals and household and detergents, but they want to be able to do sanitizers because they saw this opportunity. We have afforded them a 10 million rand based 10 million rand loan based on contracts and orders in excess of 50 million that they had, and they have obtained orders specifically for the hand sanitizer. We've been able to fund them for equipment and working capital. The next one. We have funded a company called Rise Uniform, which is primarily involved in school uniform and workwear. But what they have seen is the opportunity to be able to diversify and expand their business operations in terms of creating these cloth masks. We encourage this in our industries to be able to say where there's opportunity to be able to either utilize the same equipment that you already have or diversify slightly, and you have experience in the manufacturing sector, please take that opportunity. We'd like to be able to see how we can fund you, but please get a purchase order like the Rise Uniform got 7 million disposable and reusable face masks to be able to do, and we've been able to afford them 10 million rands, and they're producing 55,000 masks per day. The next one. And Tara Health is another one which we are funded, owned by Mr. Nicholas Naidu. Again, these are dealing with medical supplies, generally from your N95 face masks, your disinfectants, your full body suits. I have put this one specifically here because I wanted to be able to show the fact that it is not just because if you're supplying, you're just a supplier or a distributor. This is an actual company that's involved in distribution and manufacturing of products beyond just the face mask and beyond just the sanitizer. They have gone on to be able to look at full body suits, gowns, and other medical supplies, and we've been able to supply them. They are listed with various government departments, as you can see, the Department of Health, the police, the Transnet, and the like. The next one slide. So in conclusion, one question that we're asked is how quickly can you move? Because you know, we're often criticized as DFIs to say we are not moving quick enough. Our aim is to try to be able to process these within 10 days. That is our aim, provided we get all the documentation that we require. We are moving quite quickly. Our whole team in the region as well as at head office is geared towards COVID-19 funding, and we're trying to move these as quickly as possible through the system in terms of it. There are a lot of quantities coming through. We may not always adhere to the 10 days, but we're trying to be able to keep it within the 10 days on average. Next one, Steve. That's in conclusion. Please move on to the next slide. Our contact details. I've put up my cell phone to be able to contact me directly if need be. Our office hours, if we get back to the office soon, but we're still working from home, hence my cell phone number, as well as our national line for the COVID fund. The emails are there as well, my direct email, as well as the COVID Fund email, so that if ever, for whatever reason, I'm not available, you can send it directly through to our COVID Fund email, and somebody will be able to attend to it and pick it up. On our national line, we have dedicated people that are manning the phones to be able to pick up and be able to assist you and to be able to take this forward. Thank you very much, Neville.
Thank you so much, Pagamila, for that presentation. We are going to now move swiftly into a Q&A session. There's been quite a number of questions. I'm just going to start with each one and then just pose the questions accordingly in terms of how they've been received online. I'll just start with Ithala Development Corporation. Pearl, if I could ask you to respond to a number of these questions. The first one, quite an interesting one, because yesterday we had ICT and Fourth Industrial Revolution's webinar, which sought to have a discussion around our access to the internet. So the first question to you is, when are you as Ithala going to embrace the Fourth Industrial Revolution to ensure that your applications are done online and that questions can also be posed online and responses accordingly from an online platform? The second question is Ithala's turnaround time in terms of the applications. A lot of the other entities have indicated their turnaround times. Are you able to please respond to what is Ithala's turnaround time for applications that are complete and have been submitted to Ithala? And then the third one is related to your offices. Some of the questions that are coming through from the chat saying that your offices are closed, and as a result, SMMEs can't access Ithala, they can't access it online, and they can't even access it at your offices directly. So your response in respect of that. And then the last one is asking for SMMEs wanting to participate in the property sector. How do you make opportunities available through some of your industrial estates where the SMMEs can come in and assist in repackaging some of the ones that are laying idle? Or if there is an opportunity for Ithala to sell them off, how can companies participate in those? And then once you've answered these questions, Sis Pearl, then we'll move over to our next panelists. I'll give you a chance to respond to these questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Neville. On the first question on when are we getting online, it's a serious question for ourselves. We are busy automating our business finance now because we are behind. I must admit, and I must really give my sincere apology for really maybe for some time ignoring that part, but we are busy with that. We want also to have an app where people would be able to go into our app and contact us like any other bank. We are really working very hard on that one. And I must say thank to Edtea as well, because they've been really helping us to set up that system both for IDFC and Ithala SOC. So we are there, we are aware, and we really, don't want to always be called, that Mambara bank that is behind. We are working on that one. On the second question, our turnaround time is 7 days for the applications. It can be earlier, but it will take maximum 7 days if you do apply. Our offices might be closed somewhere, but we are open for business. I do have some email addresses here that I will be giving. I've just asked the team to update our presentation so that the last screen is showing all the email addresses, because they are both for properties as well as business finance, and the main one for our call center. We have set up a call center. We'll be giving that information. We are open for business. Please, I'll also put my email address as well so that people will be able to contact via my office. I will give the email for my office as well so that I can also keep track when the people are doing those applications. And then on our properties, we do want to invite as many people as they can to come and join us. We are unable to sell them for now because there was a moratorium from government not to sell them, but we are prepared. We have a policy that has passed to say we can partner with the private sector. Whether if we do have money to renovate or if the money is too high, then we can get in some sort of a partnership. But we really are looking at DTIs on board with us to revamp some of our industrial areas, and we are also looking at all our shopping centers as well, especially the Wilson's Wharf and Kwamashu. Those are our two priorities to look at, but we will be inviting our private sector to join us. Thank you very much, Neville.
Thank you very much for that response. Ms. Pearl, I'll move swiftly to our next presenter, KZN Growth Fund. In terms of support that you've indicated, why are you only limiting it to those that are your existing clients? Why are you also not including new applications of companies that have been impacted by COVID? Number two, have you considered having a dedicated fund for youth and women who want to participate in projects, particularly in the SEZs or the industrial estates? And how can KZN Growth Fund assist in facilitating engagements, for young entrepreneurs that want to participate in opportunities in SEZs? And then the third one is, why do you charge? The way it came about it says the Reserve Bank is charging prime. Why do banks charge prime plus? So I suppose the question for all the others as well. So if you can start with that also there, Aubrey. And then the last one is, do you have a distress fund that you are going to set up that will assist companies that have gone into distress as a result of COVID? Thank you.
Thank you, Neville. I'll start with the first question, which was asking about why are we only limited to existing clients. I think the person who raised the question might have asked the question before I went to the slide that talked about new applications. Our assistance is not limited to our clients only. Yes, our clients are important, but we are also looking at new applications. I had a slide, if people have access to my presentation, where I was talking about measures we are putting in place for new applications. And then the next question was about a dedicated fund to women and youth in the SEZ or industrial estates. Actually, we are already doing that. We are funding companies that are situated in our SEZ. I'll just give you an example. At the Dube Trade Port, which is an SEZ, we have a condom manufacturing factory there, the only black condom manufacturer in South Africa. It's owned 100% black. And then we have a cold storage also at the SEZ, at the Dube Trade Port. Then we also even have projects that are within industrial zones like Ithala, the company that I mentioned and NEF mentioned, Afrozonke Chemicals. When we funded them, we insisted that they went to Ithala Estate, industrial estate in Pinetown. So it is part of our normal funding that we fund companies that are situated in that. In part of, we have got companies that are planning to be situated at the Richards Bay IBZ. We are currently looking at those applications. In terms of pricing, I think the question on why banks are charging prime plus, it's mainly related to the commercial banks, I guess, because they are getting funding from the Reserve Bank. The Reserve Bank is pumping some liquidity into the system. We are different in any way, even for besides the Reserve Bank's actions for this COVID funding. The funding we are looking at in terms of discounted interest rate is below prime. So we are not affected by that question as much. And then the last question was the establishment of a distress fund. We currently don't have a dedicated distress fund, but in terms of our existing clients who are already distressed that we are assisting, one could then say we are already performing a distress function by providing those companies. But the companies that we have not funded that are struggling, we are also encouraging them to apply, and we will look at the merit of their case. I think one of the presenters mentioned the important thing is a turnaround plan. You can't come and say your company is distressed, you need funding, but when we ask you to table a plan of how you're going to change the fortunes of your company, you don't have a plan. But if you believe you have a plan, you are more than welcome to approach us. Thank you, Neville.
While you're on the platform, Aubrey, can you, which is also cross-cutting, it says basically on all the presentation, everything looks good, but have you explored taking advantage of blockchain or AI, as well as big data analytics for funding, in terms of funding right and options?
Thanks, Neville. ICT and its related activities is part of the sectors that we fund as KZN Growth Fund. Actually, until recently in our books, we had about 3 companies that were in the ICT space, but it has been mostly ICT infrastructure, like fiber cables, that we had funded. But we are open to the new and emerging areas of that sector. And I must be honest, we don't have a project that we have looked at, that we have funded, but we are prepared to look at them and also get expertise. Some of these things you need to bring in-house expertise to be able to assess and want to see there is a project that is viable. But the door is not closed because it is part of a sector that we're looking at.
Okay, we'll come back to this question a little bit more in detail shortly. Just moving on to IDC. The questions that have come through for the IDC, most of, in fact, quite a few have been asking, why do you ask for such high own contribution, as high as 50% in terms of equity? The second question is the tourism projects. What is IDC's role in facilitating and assisting tourism projects? And then the third question is, in terms of your turnaround time, the challenge that is being experienced is that some projects that are being assessed tend to take quite a long time, and with almost a back and forth type of a response from IDC. So what is your response to that? And then the last one is, please say your email address again quite slowly, because apparently you said it quite fast, so that you know, those that are listening in are able to write it down. And then the same question that I gave Aubrey now is in terms of the ICT sector, taking advantage of blockchain and AI. Or perhaps let's park that one, because I think at the end I'll just ask Dr. Rolls to come in, because we had a long discussion yesterday in the ICT sector, which required a little bit more detail. So I think once you've all answered, then I'll bring Dr. Rolls in to just unpack that one. Pat.
Thanks, Neville, for the question. I think the contribution, we need to differentiate between now the COVID funding and the normal IDC funding. I think this conference or this discussion was focusing on the COVID funding or COVID-19 funding. In terms of the COVID funding, it's simple in the sense that you have to have an order, and we never spoke about contributions there. Either a new business or the existing business. We didn't speak about contribution. The fundamental qualifying criteria is there. You you need to be in the essential supplies business, and you should have either order, a letter of intent, and so the contribution element doesn't apply. In the normal IDC funding, those are normal financing criteria, those are policies, but they're not cast in stone. The contribution is not cast in stone. Remember, the more geared your business is, the more responsibility on you to service the loan from an interest point of view. So that it costs you more. When you borrow more, it's going to cost you more every month from your cash flow to service that loan. So like all my colleagues in the different institutions, we look at similar funding criteria and principles, whether it's your commercial banks or your development funding institution. The sustainability or the cash flow of the business must be able to service the loan, and it's structured to suit the cash flow of the business. So the contribution is we, as much as we may say we want 40% or 50%, those are policies, but they're not cast in stone. And remember, if you're borrowing money, you have to have the affordability and sustainability to repay that loan. And again, I'm saying, if you borrow maximum, you're gonna the responsibility becomes that much more to service that loan. And we can see it now in the current COVID-19 pandemic, that businesses are and personal people are. If you overcommitted yourself in terms of loans, you're going to find it very difficult to service the loan. And we're looking at how best to service that loan. Okay. In terms of tourism project, we always looked at it. I don't know whether the question was post-COVID in terms of how the industry has panned out now. Again, we can look at the distress funding from new clients or existing clients. But again, you need to have a turnaround plan. How do you get, for example, in the tourism industry, how do you now get new, clients or what they term in the tourism industry is bum to bed. How do you get that? How do you turn your business around? What are your new offerings now to attract new people to that? So the question of, I'm not sure. We still look at the tourism industry. Again, that industry is highly affected by the current situation. And if we're looking to fund that industry, we need to see what is your competitive edge, what are you offering to attract people to your destination. In terms of turnaround times, our project, as I say, we do take security, but our projects, our funding is based on the viability or the economic merit of the business. So we, as a development funding institution, we do a due diligence. A due diligence is a comprehensive assessment, should I say, or audit of your business, that we need to get comfort that that business has the potential to be sustainable and repay the loan. Remember, the funding from IDC is a loan. And what we test at the IDC is the affordability. And if the turnaround time, if it takes long, we're doing our work in terms of testing the affordability of your business to repay that loan. And again, it's how long is a piece of string. As my other colleagues have said, your turnaround, we talk about turnaround days, but the client's responsibility is to give us all that information. And as soon as you give us all that information, and I think I can talk to all about my colleagues here, and they'll agree with me. As soon as you give us all those information, we will process your application as fast as possible. But we find that there's always delay in it's a both side thing. So turnaround times will be, we have to assess the sustainability of the business. Lastly, my email address is patm, PATM, @idc.co.za. .co.za. Thank you.
Thank you so much. just the last three questions, one each, one for NEF. From an NEF perspective, how do you assist companies to, particularly those that are already in your database, to also allow or speak to government departments to procure from those companies in order for them to grow, especially now during COVID, so that they are not prone to go into distress. The question for Sefa, a lot that I'm in for, but mostly the same question, asking in terms of turnaround time. A lot of the comments that have come through are basically suggesting that Sefa is non-responsive to applications. I must have gone through probably 8 or 9 that have indicated non-responsiveness from Sefa. Could you please just respond to that? And then for Honorable MEC, and I saw also the HOD was online shortly. I'm not sure if he's still on, but for MEC Treasury, what is your appetite for PPP projects? I'll start with Pagamile.
Thank you very much, Neville. I'm assuming that the question relates to a client of ours that is already producing one of the COVID products. In terms of existing businesses that are already producing the COVID products, what we are doing is engaging with our different partners, and especially under our enterprise and supplier development funding, to be able to ensure that orders do keep coming, and in terms of contracts to be able to be maintained, and for us to be able to ensure that our clients continue to be able to survive. In terms of relief funding, we are not providing relief funding, but what we are doing is we have agents that were assisting our clients to be able to apply to the Department of Small Business and Business Development to ensure that those businesses that are having problems in terms of being able to sustain themselves are readily assisted, and therefore, because of that situation, we're monitoring the book quite closely, and we're in interaction with all of our clients in terms of that measure.
Sefa, in terms of responsiveness, Tula.
Thank you for the question. I just think Pat also highlighted this issue, but I won't go over it again. And my recommendation or suggestion would be maybe just share my email address. If your application is stuck in the process and you don't know where it is, and you just need to get some feedback, rather email me, Tula M, THULAM @sefa.org.za. Then I'll be able to take it up.
Thank you so much, MEC Pillay.
Apologies. Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, MEC.
Yeah. No, I think the question in relation to PPPs, whether we have an appetite or not, yes, we do. I think the situation we find ourselves now, and perhaps accelerates the urgency with which we need to look at such options. It was there before, and I think it will be even more so now. If we had to look at our probably 2 flagship PPPs would be the Nkosi Albert Lutuli Hospital, which remains a public-private partnership. In fact, we've extended it, but we do want to, and it will go out to tender again for a further period while we build up capacity to bring it totally in-house. There's a Lembe, there's a water scheme in the broader Balito area that's run by PPP, and we're currently looking at an application from Shatuze, if I recall correctly, as the bigger schemes which are being implemented through the PPP. At the moment, the compliance issues are a little bit onerous with the kind of national treasury approvals that we need, and the need to appoint transaction advisors and get treasury approvals 1 and 2 before you get into the actual implementation stage. But I think this what is COVID-19 is doing is forcing us to rethink issues. And if they're as onerous as they are, how can we simplify them? And the PPP does not have to be only in the big mega projects. We need to look at how we can do small things with the PPP. In fact, we need to have use the concept of PPP to have partnerships with communities and community organizations, where I can think of several areas where communities through simple volunteerism are adding great value. But the answer is yes, we're open to ideas, and that's the reasons that we are having these engagements, so as to be able to get stakeholders to suggest areas where they think a PPP could work, even if it's not through the public platform, through the contact addresses and numbers that are being given, so that we can engage on its viability. So answer is yes, we do.
Thank you, MEC. I'll ask Dr. Rolls if you can please come in on blockchain and AI. Okay, I think we've lost Dr. Rolls. I think there are a lot of questions that have been coming through. We will endeavor to forward the ones that are specific to each of instruments in order for them to be able to respond to the questions. I think a lot of our entities here today have tried to provide clear and direct lines of communication, and also an indication of exactly how to access the respective funding. As this brings us a little bit close to the end, just before we conclude, I'd like Honorable MEC Ravi Pillay to say a few words, and then we will then, I'm not sure if MEC Nomsa Dube is still with us, and if she will also say a few words, and then I'll then indicate a bit more detail on the other instruments, as well as the other webinars that will be taking place. MEC Pillay.
Thank you very much, Neville. Let me start by thanking you and the team and all those who were motivated to join and be part of this webinar. Firstly, it's a new way of doing things, and I think we're going to be able to expand this exponentially as we go forward. Now, clearly, finance as a sector, there will be those who will be interested in how they can access the funding, and that's quite correct. There's no problem with that. But we would like to introduce into the discourse a bigger aspect of evaluation as to how we use the monies we do have and what value we get from it. I think that's going to be a very important thing going forward. What is the level of wastage? What is the level of malfeasance as well is something. We need to really take that out of our discourse, because it just occupies too much energy, apart from the fact that whatever amount is involved in that is the amount wasted and not going towards the public good. So I think that must become part of our evaluation as we go forward. That, in fact, brings me to one of the questions that was asked. I mean, I don't think you asked it, Neville, but I saw it pop up on this technology, which I'm also getting used to. But it was a little bit of a despondent comment to say, no, we won't get anything from whichever institution they were talking about. So we'd like to be more accountable on that score, more transparent. So for example, one of the agencies says they have 200 million rand available, then the public needs to know exactly how that money was used, how many beneficiaries actually were successful, and a greater M&E, monitoring and evaluation aspect to our work in a transparent way, so that we can then see what's working and what's not working. The third point I want to make is that we are quite committed that out of that 500 billion that is being used as a stimulus nationally, that we as KZN must get our fair share. And broadly speaking, in terms of our population demographics and other factors, we hover around 20%. So we're saying that at least 100 billion of that 500 billion through the various instruments must find expression in KZN. And part of my job and the team's job is to make sure that that happens, or if it doesn't happen, to raise it and interrogate it so that we can correct it. On the procurement side, and the whole lot of items that were listed, and this really applies generally apart from the COVID-19 items. Firstly, there's government regulations for state procurement, which those who want to supply need to be aware of. And that is, there's what is called a transversal contract that has been put out at the national level for much of these goods. But as provincial government and as local government, we're not obliged to follow that national transversal contract, as long as we can show that the quality of the goods is the same or better, and the price is the same or better. In other words, that national contract then provides a benchmark for the prices that we want to pay, that we're prepared to pay. Of course, this is dealing with an old problem, which I think we've made a lot of progress on, but we're continuing to interrogate it. And put simply, you will all recall those horror stories of where a bottle of water, you shouldn't be buying bottled water anymore, by the way, but at that time, a bottle of water, which would cost 6 Rand, was being paid 36 Rand by the state. So that kind of absolute abuse of the public procurement process can find no place. So the benchmark prices are there, it's in the schedule. And maybe Neville, was one of the other things we need to do is to popularize some of these key documents, especially the government gazette and the instruction note from Treasury that provides a list of these items and the prices that they have negotiated nationally, and which we can obviously beat if we can, but we can also procure off that national transversal contract. I think there are other issues which will come out of the other work streams, but those are going to be equally important, whether it's agriculture or tourism, or even the land issue. Is this, at this point, with market prices probably coming down significantly, is this an opportunity now for government and stakeholders to deal with the land issue? The land is clearly a major means of economic empowerment. The agriculture sector is something that we will need to unpack as well. The point I'm making is that finance is not a virtual thing above everything else. It must find expression in practical economic activity in these various sectors that we are trying to unpack. And let me conclude with the last point, that is, we need to come back, what I mentioned earlier, is on monitoring and evaluation. The Premier's office is revamping its nerve center, which also has implications for the IT opportunities. But that nerve center is literally going to be the center of monitoring and evaluation, expected to generate data on anything and everything that is happening in our province, both in government and hopefully expand to the private sector. Remember, the government spend and government activity represents only 30% of economic activity. 70% is in the private sector. We need to know what's happening in every sector, disaggregate issues to their root, and develop appropriate responses to it. Just to reflect again on yesterday's very successful IT webinar. We didn't discuss it yesterday, but we've done an evaluation, and as provincial and local government, we probably spend close to, I think it's close to it's about 800 million, close to R1 billion a year on our IT, both infrastructure and software requirements. So we need to interrogate that. Is it properly coordinated? Is it bits and pieces by everyone in an inefficient way? How can we streamline and coordinate it to get the best impact in terms of IT for government, but also the best impact in terms of empowering the sector that many participants spoke very passionately about yesterday. So thank you very much. I hope that this has been of value. Obviously, there were relatively, I am told that we passed the 600 mark, so there were very few direct participants and contributors, but we need to find a way to reach as many of those who saw fit to log in and get some feedback as to what they thought and how we can improve. But thank you very much, and good wishes to everyone.
Thank you, Steve, for that feedback, and your remarks were certainly quite clear and decisive. And I think we're going to have an interesting debate next week when it's government with the private sector banks next week in terms of what they are seeking to offer. So I am looking forward to that session as well. I'll now request our Honorable MEC Nomsa Dube to say closing remarks, and then I will then do a round off. Honorable MEC. MEC, if you could please unmute yourself. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Neville, and to my MEC, Pile, and all the panel members. Thank you very much. I was trying to look at all the comments, and it is clear from the participants that indeed we do need to be practical when we are dealing with these matters. And we do need to take the issue of localization seriously if we are to recover the economy of KwaZulu-Natal. Indeed, as the MEC articulated that we have set up systems in place, I have also asked Neville to share with this webinar and all the participants the list of all the other interventions that we've put in place as the government of KwaZulu-Natal. Yeah, there they are, of all the national COVID funds interventions that are available by the various government departments. And we've also set up teams that are available to assist anybody who wants to ask questions. What we've also done is that we have established a document that simplifies each one of those legislation as to who qualifies, how do you qualify, and we have as well support that helps you to apply for each one of those funds. Over and above, we have Operation Vula there, which is our own support in the province that is also aimed at really reigniting and supporting financial support SMMEs and entrepreneurs in recovering our economy. Our trade and investment, KwaZulu-Natal has got that one-stop shop as well as the WhatsApp line where you can ask questions or you can also send inquiries. We also have a team of experts who can ask and support you with questions related to finances, questions related to labor relations or HR, questions related to legal, questions related to communications, questions related to finances, and all those that support is given to you free of charge. We also have our district officers that are available to everybody to go and also again get any of the forms, any of the support in case you need to ask questions or you need to know or to get any information. We are also working on ensuring that our internet hubs or our ICT hubs are made available as soon as possible so that everybody out there in all the districts can have access to internet cafes or ICT hubs, and you can be able to go there, download the form, or be able to send emails or any inquiries that you might also want to send. We will further be sending information about our activation of all our ICT hubs that will be powered very soon. You would have heard yesterday in our discussion of the ICT webinar, we will be giving you that information. Hopefully, our ICT in Mkungundlovu will be powered within the next week or so. ICT people, inshallah, we're hoping that could be made available as soon as possible. But other ICT hubs also should be made available as soon as possible, so that everybody can then have access to all those internets or ICT hubs. Because it's no use for us to have all these supports that we're talking about today, and you are not able to send those forms, you are not able to make those applications, you are not able to send any of that information because you do not have access to any of those things that are written here, because you do not have connectivity. And I said earlier on when I was talking that we have to be practical when we talk about this. It's one thing to talk, but it's another thing to be practical and put ourselves in the shoes of those community members out there, those entrepreneurs that are out there who are frustrated, who want to make a living, who wants to get things done, while we are on the other side of the desk and we are really ready with our bureaucracy, we're ready to make things not to happen. And I hope that for colleagues who are also in the panel, you will be able to continue to open those questions that have been sent to all of us, and we'll be able to respond to all the questions that have been sent, so that even those that had sent questions that have not been responded to, we will continue to respond to all those questions. Those questions will also go through our WhatsApp number and on our one-stop shop, through the KZN Trade and Investment one-stop shop, and through our WhatsApp number in the KZN one-stop shop. So please don't think that if you did not send those through there, there's no other avenue. There are avenues of sending those questions, and we will be able to respond to them through all those avenues. We will also make sure that we continue these discussions. It doesn't only need to be through the webinar. You can still send us through the Facebook, on all our social media network. We will make sure that all the entities that you see reflected there, and all our panel members that are reflected here, and all others that might not be reflected here, will be able to respond, and we will follow up with them and ensure that they respond to all the questions. What we would like to request to all of you as participants is that it is not going to be possible that we throw money into everything that we see out there, but rather it's not everything that needs money, but most of the time there are things that we will do to give the hand up, because there's a lot of good work that is being done out there by many of you that you are already doing. That is why in our Operation Vula, in the main, we support those that are already into business first, because we want to enhance what you are already doing. There are other avenues that are supporting the startups. There are other avenues that are supporting those that are already into the business. And we are also continuing to lobby and to share the database with all other partners in terms of access to markets, because that remains a key hindrance to the markets, the access to markets. And as we spoke about it yesterday, that it is a challenge, colleagues. I don't want to lie. We have shared the database with many of our departments, with many of our national colleagues, that we have SMMEs that are doing great things out there, but the barrier to entering into that space, it's still an uphill to all our communities. That is why we need to find a solution as to how can we ensure that our communities have got the food into those businesses that are out there. But as we talk about retraining, as we talk about reskilling, as we talk about ensuring that those economic sectors that we think will assist us in rejuvenating and kickstarting the economy of KZN is one of those areas that we are concentrating on. And as we were dealing with the finance issues today, we've been able, I hope, to expose everybody in this webinar to all the myriad of interventions that are available to everybody to assist and support you in ensuring that we create as many jobs as we can. So the information that you saw, that list that you saw there, is accompanied by a booklet, and that booklet has been simplified. And I hope my colleagues that have been trying to translate each one of those booklets and those regulations into all our the languages, particularly language yethu lapha KwaZulu Natal. I hope ukuthi will be able to post those ukuthi abe available as well in our website, so that everybody can have access to those booklets, and then we will then be able to have our communities to have that information. The one last issue that I would like to leave with you, Neville, the one area that also still remain a thorny issue is the UIF. The UIF remains one of those areas that is still a challenge. I hope that in one of our webinars, we could get the UIF to also come in because it remains a challenge to both big and small businesses. There's a lot of questions that we have for them, and as well as the answers that we'd like to see them addressing for us. And once more, thank you very much, Neville, for facilitating. Thank you very much to our secretariat for putting all of this together. To our ICT team, thank you very much for connecting all of us. And to our panelists, thank you very much to all of you for making yourself available. And to our MEC, and as well as our cluster team, thank you very much to everybody, as well as Kabazela and your team. We really appreciate everybody. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you, MEC, for the words, and thank you for most certainly giving us guidance. The UIF most certainly will flag it at MEC that we included in one of the webinars. While I'm speaking about the webinars, just to share the schedule of the upcoming webinars in the next few days that MEC spoke about. So these are basically the webinars that will be taking place. Today, we've already had the fundraising one, and then this afternoon we will be having the health innovation and manufacturing webinar, which will be starting at 3 o'clock this afternoon. That's going to be quite an interesting one, because we have also the HOD and senior members of the Department of Health in terms of PPE and the manufacturing capability of our province. We'll have a red tape session, which will start at 5:30 this afternoon. Tomorrow will be just one webinar for the day, which will focus on the informal sector. And then on Thursday, we're going to have 3 that are specifically aligned with industrial development, investment and trade, tourism and agriculture. So a lot of the questions that have been coming, particularly related to tourism and agriculture, can be answered in those webinars. The trade and investment one is purely talking about the stimulus packages and how to stimulate the economy to bring it back to its feet. And then the industrial development is on developing the industry and also seeing a cohesive integration. And then on the 1st of May, infrastructure development, creative economy, as well as clothing and textiles webinars. We will be sending out all the links for all these webinars in the few days to come. In terms of contacts, I'd like to just share, if you have any further questions, particularly related to this work stream, if you can please contact Mr. Sihle Ngamu. His cell number is 063 502 1777. 063 502 1777. And then in terms of the one-stop shop, the MEC mentioned, you can phone 031 368 9602. So, and then you can get more details also on the website of Trade and Investment KwaZulu-Natal. With those few words, I'd like to also thank the technical team led by Dr. Rolls and Dennis Rolls, Steve Johnson, and all the other teams that have been assisting us, my colleagues, Fikiswa, Sifem Kize, and everyone else who's been part of this process. With these few words, ladies and gentlemen, let me just say thank you very much. MECs, thank you for your leadership and assisting and guiding us through this path. There's a lot on our plate that we've got to make sure that we deliver on, and we are up for the challenge. Thank you so much and be blessed.